Good morning from Hawaii. I'm so happy to have all of you here today. If we've never met before, my name is Lindsay Helm, and this is Empower Hour, where we take time bi-weekly to talk to the game changers and cover all the topics as it has to pertain to employment in the veteran and military space. Today, I'm beyond excited to introduce to you all a rock star, someone that I have gotten to work with for years, and it's so cool to see him transition. My guest today is Bobby Thompson. Bobby was an Army combat veteran that transitioned from service in 2017 after two separate blocks of service. So to me, that tells me he didn't learn his lesson. Bad joke. Okay. He's used his career for a diverse experience with both military and civilian assets to open doors for the underserved and the underrepresented along the way. Really excited to have him here today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Empower Hour, Bobby Thompson. Hello.
Hello.
You're so spiffy. I like the tie. You look all fancy.
Thank
How you
you.
doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me, Lindsay, and I'm excited to collaborate with you once again. And this is such a great platform to talk about veterans and mil spouses and what we can do to help everyone in this group be better and succeed.
Yeah, I actually had a flashback of a photo that popped up on my memories today, and it's kind of fitting. And it's me, you, and a radio station host in Cleveland, Ohio, like sitting, like I think I'm sitting there, standing there. And it was just really fun because we get to do this again today. So thank you so much for coming. But let's get to the meat and potatoes and talk about you. Would you mind sharing your transition story with everyone watching?
Sure, and thank you for that introduction as well. I have a very windy road as far as my military background, right? My veteran story transitioned a couple of different times in different components and different capacities. So I was able to experience both the National Guard side of life, the Army Reserve side of life, and the active duty side of life, both with being voluntold to do certain services, broadening assignments as we call them, and as well as combat tours, right? So in Afghanistan, as well as Operation Noble Eagle after September 11th occurred. So being able to have that varied experience, I was satisfied with everything that I had seen, and my family was in a state of wanting to plant roots, right? I know a lot of families out there have that discussion at the kitchen table. Where's the next PCS going to be? Where's the next place we're going to live if you're not homestead in a certain recruiting field, if that's where you are now, or if you're still abroad and you're transitioning, you're about to retire. I know that conversation comes up, and the fear that gripped me when I realized and my family realized that it was time for us to plant roots, and that meant getting out of the comfort of the known, right? The contractually bound agreement that you're okay. You're gonna have service as a backup because that's what you do. You are a soldier, or you're an officer, or you're an NCO, whatever you identify as. And I had a hard realization that I am not that identity, and I'm so much more. And I know a lot of transitioning service members, have a difficulty with that, figuring out where their hard and soft skills that they've learned and that they've gathered throughout their entire service career, what that means in the civilian sector. And I think each component or each branch does a good job, or a good attempt, so to speak, and the DoD does as well, at trying to help transitioning service members through training, through resources like the Skills Bridge and things like that, or the Skill Bridge. And I think that when you look at it, I really wasn't ready to transition. So I jumped on LinkedIn at the recommendation of one of those transitioning courses that the Army told me to take in order to actually get out. And in doing so, I started to grow my network, and I didn't really know what field I wanted to be in. What I found was the structure that I'd come to love of service, and the standardization approach, and the ability to task manage and excel through my own productivity and what I brought to the team was a perfect fit for the building industry. I started at a national builder as an assistant construction manager, and grew within the field to become a construction manager, and then take on more and more responsibility. As we know, it felt very much so like being promoted through the ranks, right? And getting more and more responsibility put upon your shoulders. And so I took to it like a fish to water. And the reason for this conversation is I want to make sure that just so others knew that the building industry is such a critical resource for all of us, and that it's something that it's everywhere, no matter where you're going to be, terminal leave, where you're going to PCS, where you're going to final destination is going to be, your home of record is or is not. There's going to be a support system because you need housing in everywhere in the United States, every one of those locations, the industry is present, and they're short of high-speed, low-drag individuals.
Got it. So let's talk about, I think, what was kind of your last position before you transitioned? Because when I met you, you were doing recruiting. And so to go from recruiting to talking me down, you're like, I landed in the business construction industry. I'm like, whoa, like how does that even happen? And I mean that in a good way. Like you successfully pivoted and took all of those skills throughout kind of military life and your regular life, because you're kind of a, if people don't know, it's kind of a go-getter anyway. I don't know if you picked up on the energy today or not, but what does that look like? Like going from, when I saw you recruiting, where did you go after recruiting? And then I heard you say you went to a transition course and you looked at all of that, but what did that entry point look like for you? And talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind. I'd love for people to hear that it's possible to not go straight into HR, from recruiting to wherever. Not that there's anything wrong with that caveat.
Correct. So I was beneficial, or a benefit of my career is that I've had kind of different exposures to different MOSs, right? Military occupational specialties, for those of you who aren't in the know, right? So I joined as an 11 Bravo, an infantry team member. And so that was my initial MOS. That was my initial job in the Army. And so taking it from there, I got to do a bunch of awesome stuff, a bunch of cool things, right? And when I finally broke out that branch of service, or that contract, right? Lindsay had mentioned I had 2 blocks of service. That was my first block. And so I realized that I didn't really have, from that experience, marketable skills that transitioned really well outside of a police officer, security guard. Those are like the go-to, if you look at the MOS transfers, that's what that would pretty much put you into job-wise. And I didn't like the taste that it put in my mouth, right? So I took a block, I went to college, or took a break, went to college, and then came back. And when I came back as a 91 Charlie, an HVAC utilities equipment repairer, essentially is the full nomenclature. But essentially, that put me in the maintenance and construction mindset for the Army, right? And so after going through that and becoming a Samuel Sharp Award winner and awardee for the Ordnance group, it exposed me to just so much more, right? In each of my locations, duty stations, I was stationed in Puerto Rico for a stint, for Fort Gillem for a stint, and it gave me a good, well-rounded approach to project management. And essentially managing multiple MOSs, multiple ordnance MOSs, to be able to sustain life for a facility, for a FOB, or for an entire base. And being able to do that gave me the skill set I needed for project management. And then right at that time, the Army said, you know what, you're one of the top 5% in your MOS. You should probably be a recruiter. And that's how I ended up in recruiting. And they had the wisdom to move me from Atlanta, Georgia to Cleveland, Ohio. So my family was super excited about that. And then that's where I met you, Lindsay, in the Cleveland Recruiting Battalion, where I had a great time learning other marketable skills that I had, being able to publicly speak, right? The radio opportunity be turned into an actual regular gig there. And we did great things in that battalion, in that company for Cleveland Recruiting. And then from there, transitioned out and reached out on LinkedIn and said, hey, everyone, this is what's happening. I'm transitioning. I'm thinking about Florida or Maryland. My family, we have soft ties to Maryland, and Florida is where we have soft ties as well. This is where we're targeting. And one of my old battle buddies said, hey, you know what? I think there's a company that's hiring, and it's in the construction industry, if that's something you'd be interested into. I was like, you know what? Project management is my shtick. This is where I feel comfortable prior to my recruiting experience, and gave it a go. And that's how I ended up where I am. And then now, from transitioning throughout the years in this industry, being a part of a national builder and kind of building diversity and inclusion there at a national level, it gave me more insight to the need to actually hold the doors open for underrepresented individuals, right? Given my position and wherever I land myself. And so Caruso Homes is no different. We are a highly progressive company. And with that being said, as a minority executive, I find myself dual in a representation at that as a veteran and a minority in an industry that is typically not me, right? And so to be able to expand, to be able to expand the exposure and opportunity for others like me is something that I feel required to do given my actual position and purpose in life.
Well, I just learned so many things about you that I had never heard before and feel really dumb for not knowing. So what an amazing story. Like you're like, I did 11 Bravo. I was like, wait, he didn't do communications thing. I'm very confused, but so cool and so exciting about all of that. And so, we talked a little bit about Caruso and kind of what you all do, but could we take a minute just on a larger scale and really break down, Caruso Homes, where you're located, who you are, and we'll talk a little bit about the careers and kind of go through that. But really just what is so great about being at Caruso and aside from it being everywhere, just talking about the company.
Sure. Caruso Homes, thank you for asking that question. Caruso Homes has been in business for over 36 years. We are started off as a family-run business with one employee, that's Jeff Caruso, and he's grown it to now 150 employees in several states, right? Based is our corporate office in Crofton, Maryland. That's where we've grown from. And essentially, we are now in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, North Carolina, and Florida. So Florida is where we are starting to expand next. And we are very excited about the opportunity to continue to expand to become the premier regional builder on the East Coast. And the only way we do that is through relationship building.
And when you talk about building, are you doing home builds? Are you doing commercial builds? Like, what does that look like for your team right now, or for the team at Caruso?
Sure. We're strategically organized that we actually have a couple of different arms of the business that we operate in, right? We are a production home builder, but we do so on two different fronts. We do what's called on your lot, which is our product, your lot. So a customer finds a co-marketing agreement, they see our sign on a lot, and they want to buy it, but they don't know what type of house they want. They go on our website, which you've shown, and they're able to select out of our robust catalog of product types, a home that they would like to be placed there. And they work with our fantastic On Your Lot team to start that process and know the ins and outs of what that looks like, from funding to selections, all the way through build into warranty and for the life cycle of the home. Same goes for our production, which is something that individuals are more typically well versed in. It's those communities that you see sprouting up and to fill the need of the housing shortage. We do that as well in both attached and detached product, as well as our estate product on rural properties and things like that. And then, go ahead.
I mean, cut you off. I was like, that's good to know. I am really excited that they're building homes. Little known fact, I actually want to get into real estate someday. So if you're watching and like in 10 years, you see me become a real estate agent, it's my new jam. And I'm going to be in Falls Church, hopefully someday in the next 2 years. So right next to Maryland. But I love everything that you're doing. So let's talk about, since you're growing at a massive, as we would say in the military, high rate of giddy up is my favorite, but you call it what you want. What positions do you recommend military spouses and veterans apply for at, Caruso? Is there anything hot like right now that you would just love to have? And since you clearly are a walking translator, maybe translate some of those MOSs, like, hey, if you're a CB, that's Navy, we'll use Army because we're comfortable there, but what you would do and what like, and then for spouses, kind of what's available, we'll take you in a construction position if you can build, kind of those things.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I think it's the tangible and intangible. It's an assessment that each individual has to do as what they've grown throughout their career, whether they're a mil spouse or veteran. If you have found yourself to be an operations-oriented individual, right? And so you've gone through leadership courses, you've trained and refined your leadership muscles and skill sets, right? Your resiliency training, you've worked through just the ins and outs of human resources because you've had to coach, mentor, train, and motivate teams and companies, squads, whichever level of leadership you found yourself. I think that you would be able to fall into any number of positions, right? That'll serve you well. It's your detailed orientation that you have, the skill set of being able to be driven and be focused and self-motivated, will serve you well no matter which position. But speaking to MOSs specifically, if you are in a engineering field, right? If you're in a, let's call it human resources, like you mentioned, in the accounting field. So all of those lovely FOBITs that derogatory term that they say, you have actually a leg up on everyone who's all the high speed, low drag, tip of the spear type folks, because you have business corporate skills that you can bring into a number of back office positions, which run the gambit of being able to facilitate something, an actual direction of a product or a deliverable, to be able to bring, right? And so for the remote roles, you have online sales consultants. You have the ability to actually work and support the market remotely. And essentially you do so from the comfort of your home. You actually have the ability to go hybrid in some markets because of the way that they're strategically located and be able to support. So like a sales manager, for instance, that is on your lot doesn't have a model that they're operating on. So they're in the field a little bit, they're in the office a little bit, they're working from their home office a little bit. So it is actually a good variety of work styles. But obviously, because we are a home builder, there is the tried and true, the project manager, the production manager, the construction manager, the division manager, the operations manager, director level positions like myself, in different markets, right? And so as we're working towards expansion, it's needed across the board. So whether it's entry level or up, I would recommend that everyone look at the job responsibilities and descriptions, which with our partnership with Empower Employee, I'm excited to say they are mill friendly now, right? And so making sure that we are communicating on the same level. So that way we know what we know on both sides of the coin. You don't need a translator to go through it. You'll know where you're able to adapt to.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And I see some comments in the chat as we're talking about jobs, and I think we answered some of it, but just to recap, somebody said, go sales. Yes, Erica, go sales. And then as far as the sales positions, one of the things I wanted to cover was, is training. So let's say we have a military spouse who, maybe has a degree, is working from home, has been doing marketing. Is there, or even a veteran, even to do some training? Is Caruso willing to train in the sales, arena, or do you want, depending on the job description, someone who's got a couple of years of experience? Like, what does that look like for that program?
I would say both sides of that, and the reason why is that there's multiple positions in sales, right? So there's a hierarchy, as in with any structured organization. You can start as an assistant before you become a manager, right? And so those individuals that apply for a sales manager position would come with sales experience, right? Sales and marketing experience. Those who don't have that, but they have all the other soft skills that they're going to bring to the table and hard skills, they may be more in line for a sales assistant position, right? And I would say the same goes for a construction manager, right? And so if you don't really have a large amount of construction background, but you have all the other tangible skills, you may start off as an assistant construction manager, and then you will propel yourself through that hierarchy, through that ladder, based on just your tenacious desire to be driven and succeed.
Yeah. And I saw somebody ask, are these remote or in person? I think I'm going to just answer that because I think we covered it. But as a recap, sales sounds like it could be either or. And then a lot of the construction positions and other positions, I guess, would be TBD based on, operational needs of the day. Like I could definitely, I'm not going to speak for Caruso, but could definitely see where, some days the sales are completely remote or some are out. It just kind of depends on what the position is, and how it's written. So 2 more questions, if you don't mind, because you've been so generous with your time and your story, and I'm really excited. But what tips would you give for people trying to, pivot into this industry as far as construction? I want to get into this. I want to get into home building or whatever that is, especially coming from, your story. You're like, I went from 11 Bravo to HVAC. Like that's a big deal. So what are some tips and tricks surrounding that?
So the tips and tricks surrounding that and how to do that successfully is to be open to learn, right? You're not going to have the same level of subject matter expertise that you had when you were in when you transition. And you have to be comfortable learning something completely new and uncomfortable, right? You get breaking out of that comfort zone of yours, which we've done, and all the service members know every time you transition, it's all new. If you've gotten promoted and you haven't had those levels of responsibility, it's all new. If you've ever been in a broadening assignment, whether it be a drill sergeant position, whether it be a recruiting position, that was all new. So you went through training, right? And you had to strengthen those muscles on the things that you didn't know and work on your craft, whatever that may be. And so early on, my recommendation would be to grow your network in your desired located, or whatever you desire to be located as far as a location geographically, but industry as well. So if you know that you're interested in the building industry, I would start to follow individuals that are speaking about construction, right? Get exposed to the nomenclature, get exposed to the different positions, the different players in the room, right? Everyone knows that there are national builders. If you look at the Builder 100, you can see where everyone's ranked, all the publicly traded companies. But then there are some different companies in there that you may not know even exist. And if you expose yourself to that, and then you start to connect with these individuals, start to see what they post about. If you're seeing something that is interesting to you, start to ask them questions. Most individuals who are openly discussing things on LinkedIn, it's an easy tool to use, free to you, and you can do it in the palm of your hand. You're going to be blown away by the individuals like Lindsay and Empower Employee, excuse me, and individuals like myself that are super excited to share the paths in their own network to expand your opportunity. And you might get tagged in messages. Hey, it's funny that you should ask. I just saw that this position was open in this area. And then they will at you and essentially broaden your network. And when you're able to do that and engage, you're able to see what you don't know. You'll see the certifications that people have. You'll see the experience that they've went through in their work experience that you may highlight the rungs that you may want to climb to get to someone's position. And I think LinkedIn does a really good job, specifically LinkedIn Learning, to expose you to a lot of that content if you've paid for that access. But if not, there is a ton of opportunity and education opportunities that have veterans programs and mil-spouse programs to bring you that content. And so the long-winded answer to your question, Lindsay, is to get more informed and to grow your network. And then don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone.
And find a mentor. Yes, very awesome.
And find a mentor.
I know I only said 2 questions, but I forgot when you were talking. You're here today to talk about Caruso and talk about your transition and what that's been like and the opportunities in your field that's so rapidly growing. But obviously, being here is an indicator to the universe that Caruso is building a military, program. So, what are you working on right now? I know we kind of covered like writing job friendly or military friendly kind of job descriptions and whatever, but what's Caruso's, trajectory look like in the next 6 months as it pertains to growing the veteran and military spouse population? It sounds like they're very hungry to do it. What's one of your top 3, goals for the next 6 months?
Sure. Our 2023 goals are to establish our skill bridge and have that starting to bear fruit and allow transitioning service members to utilize the DoD's ability to pay them, so that way they can learn the skills and get exposure to new things. And whether Caruso would be a fit for them or not, it will allow them the ability to kind of test it out and see if that's something that they would like to do. And I think having that safe ability and to still be on the DoD payroll at the same time, you get a little bit of both, and you stay engaged militarily while getting engaged on the civilian sector. And so for us, that's high on our priority list, right? Second to that is continuing to advocate and speak out, right? In support of mil-spouse and service member transitioning. And even if you've been a veteran and you've been out for a while, that doesn't disclude you from that. And I would tell you that my intent is to continue to engage with like Vet Index and Empower Employee and other societies and groups that allow us to provide access and insight to an industry that may not have been thought of when you're transitioning.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, Vet Indexes, I was going to mention that is a great way to go interact with the military community. If you're watching and you're an employer, definitely go check them out. If you're a veteran or spouse, also go check them out. I think their virtual conference is in April. We'll meet to that of this year. It's also in person in New York City. So it's a great excuse to go check out NYC in I guess that's technically spring when it's not freezing cold, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, I finally have come to an end of all this amazing thing. And I have one really hard question for you before you go. And it's, how would you prefer that people contact you in reference to these positions, or who is the person to contact? Is it like apply, send email, resume, cover letter, pigeon? Like, what does that look like for you?
Sure. I appreciate that. There's a couple of ways to engage Caruso Homes specifically. The first step would be to look at our website, right, in our career section, and see if there's something that we've posted that is to your liking. And then if that's the case, please feel free to apply right then and there. If you have some questions about it, you may reach out to me via LinkedIn. My LinkedIn, I believe they also shared, or you can also reach out to my HR director, who her name is Chrissy Reed, and she'll be able to facilitate that. Our Caruso Homes LinkedIn also is another way for you to engage with us, ask us questions through the chat. Our HR director monitors that chat line as well. If you are just curious and just have questions and you want to communicate with us and talk through some things that you just might want to know, I would say that you can reach out to me at bthompson@carusohomes.com, or my HR director, her email is CREED, that's creed@carusohomes.com. And you can reach out to either one of us and we'll be able to point you in the right direction, answer any questions that you have, and we'll get you going to where you need to be.
Well, that's really exciting. I want to thank you and the team at Caruso for everything that you're doing. And it's a little cheesy to say, but thank you for your double service, triple service, all your services, all your advice and your energy today really has pumped me up about what we're doing, about what you're doing. And for everyone else watching, tune in a couple of weeks. I blanked and I apologize on who's going to be here. But if you're, I don't want to tell you, I think it's Intuit actually. I think Intuit is coming back to talk about their last push. So tune in a couple of weeks for the next Empower Hour. This is not the last you all have seen of Mr. Bobby Thompson. And thank you all so much for watching. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you, Lindsay.